When he told me I was too old to keep up, I laughed. Not because I found it funny, but because I'd already started calculating how to take everything he had, including the office he was sitting in. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But watching him pack his boxes from the executive suite that now bore my company's name, that felt pretty damn warm to me. I'm Maggie Foster, and for 15 years, I built my reputation at Ridgway and Calder, one campaign at a time. At 44, I wasn't just another strategist. I was the strategist. The one they called when a Fortune 500 client threatened to walk. The one who turned a dying pharmaceutical brand into a household name. The one who never missed a deadline, never lost a pitch, never let the agency down. Austin's advertising scene is brutal. It's a city where tech money meets creative ambition, where everyone's fighting for the same pool of clients who demand innovation but balk at anything truly bold. I thrived in that chaos. My office on the 7th floor overlooked Congress Avenue. And from that perch, I'd orchestrated campaigns that redefined entire industries. I wasn't flashy like the younger creatives with their designer sneakers and artisanal coffee obsessions. I wore well-tailored blazers, kept my auburn hair in a sleek bob, and let my results speak louder than any TED Talk ever could. While others chased trends, I built relationships. When competitors poached talent, I retained clients through sheer force of trust. The irony? I'd helped hire Zachary Miles. 3 months ago, when our CEO announced his retirement, the board brought in Zachary as the new executive director. 33 years old, fresh from a failed startup that he somehow spun as a valuable learning experience. He walked in wearing a Patagonia vest over a $200 t-shirt, talking about disrupting the agency model and embracing agile methodologies. I should have seen the warning signs during his first all-hands meeting. He spent 40 minutes discussing his vision for a younger, more dynamic Ridgway and Calder. He name-dropped every Silicon Valley buzzword, promised to revolutionize our approach, and kept emphasizing the need for fresh perspectives. Fresh. That word would come to haunt me. At first, I tried to be supportive. Change wasn't inherently bad, and God knows the agency needed some modernization. Our project management system was archaic, and our social media presence was embarrassing. If Zachary could fix those things while I focused on strategy, we might actually make a formidable team. But Zachary wasn't interested in teams. He was interested in kingdoms. The shift started small. He rearranged the conference room schedule, prioritizing his innovation sessions over client meetings. He hired a 25-year-old chief vibe officer. Yes, that was her actual title. Who spent her days planning mandatory fun activities and creating Spotify playlists for optimal creativity. Then came the workshop announcements. Thinking Young in a Digital Age. Millennial Mindsets for Modern Marketing. The TikTok Revolution. Why everything you know is wrong. I attended the first one out of courtesy. Zachary had brought in a social media guru who looked like he'd just rolled out of his dorm room. For 90 minutes, this kid lectured us about authentic engagement while showing TikTok videos of people doing ridiculous dances to promote insurance companies. This is the future, Zachary announced, beaming like he'd just discovered fire. This is how we stay relevant, I raised my hand. What about our pharmaceutical clients, our B2B portfolios? They're not exactly looking for dance challenges. The room went quiet. Zachary's smile tightened. That's exactly the kind of outdated thinking we need to evolve past. Maggie. Outdated. There was that word, the corporate equivalent of a slap. The real blow came on a Tuesday morning in October. I'd just arrived, coffee in hand, ready to lead the quarterly review for Meridian Healthcare, our biggest client, worth $12 million annually. I'd managed their account for 7 years, navigating them through 2 PR crises and a complete rebrand. My assistant, Paula, met me at my office door with a look I'd never seen before. Zachary wants to see you. Now. In his office, which he'd refreshed with standing desks and motivational posters featuring rock climbers, Zachary was waiting with Brittany, his new senior vice president of strategic innovation. She was 29, MBA fresh, and had been at the agency for exactly 6 weeks. Maggie, thanks for coming. He gestured to a chair while remaining standing, a power play I recognized immediately. We're making some strategic realignments. Brittany will be taking point on Meridian going forward. The coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. Excuse me? You've done incredible work, Brittany chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. But we think it's time for a fresh approach, something more current. Current? I kept my voice level, though my pulse was hammering. Meridian specifically requests me for every meeting. John Davidson won't even take calls from anyone else. Zachary leaned against his desk, affecting casual authority. That's exactly the problem. We can't have clients becoming too dependent on individual team members. It's not scalable. It's called relationship building, I shot back. It's why they've been with us for 7 years instead of jumping to Ogilvy like everyone predicted. He sighed, the kind of theatrical sigh meant to convey patient disappointment. Maggie, I'm going to be straight with you. You're talented. You've had an amazing run. But this industry is evolving at light speed. We need people who can keep up with where it's going, not where it's been. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Is this about my age? The question escaped before I could stop it. Of course not, he said too quickly. It's about adaptability, energy, the ability to connect with emerging demographics. He paused, pretending to choose his words carefully. Look, you're great at what you do. But let's be honest, you're more comfortable with traditional strategies. And that's fine. But maybe it's time to consider whether you're still in your optimal performance window. Optimal performance window, corporate speak for too old. Brittany nodded sagely, as if Zachary had just delivered profound wisdom instead of age discrimination wrapped in buzzwords. I brought in $30 million in revenue last year, I said quietly. 40% of this agency's total billings. Past performance, Zachary replied, doesn't guarantee future success. We need to think ahead. Brittany understands the platforms and trends that matter now. She speaks the language of tomorrow's consumers. She's never run a campaign worth more than $500,000. His smile turned sharp. Everyone starts somewhere. You did too. Once. Back when you were hungry for it. The implication was clear. I'd gotten comfortable, lazy, obsolete. The meeting ended with Zachary's hollow reassurances that I'd still have plenty of meaningful work, and that this was an opportunity for growth. I walked out knowing exactly what had just happened. I'd been benched, sidelined, marked for a slow professional death. Over the next weeks, the humiliations compounded. I was excluded from pitch meetings I'd previously led. My input was solicited, then ignored. In one excruciating moment, Zachary introduced me to a potential client as our veteran strategist who provides institutional memory. Institutional memory? Like I was a filing cabinet with legs. The final insult came during a Friday afternoon meeting. We were discussing the agency's 5-year vision when Zachary turned to me with that practiced smile. Maggie, where do you see yourself fitting into our future? The question was loaded, designed to make me acknowledge my own expendability. Around the table, younger faces watched with a mixture of pity and relief. Pity for my position. Relief, it wasn't them. I see myself doing what I've always done, I replied evenly. Delivering exceptional results for clients who trust experience over flash. He laughed, actually laughed. Experience is valuable, sure. But Maggie, let's be real. You're excellent at what you do, but you're not exactly evolving. And in this business, if you're not evolving, you're dying. Dying, I repeated. Wrong word choice. He backpedaled slightly. I meant stagnating. Look, I respect everything you've contributed, but sometimes knowing when to step back is the most valuable skill of all. Not everyone can maintain peak performance indefinitely. Around the table, not a single person spoke up. These people I'd mentored, supported, fought for. They all just stared at their laptops, complicit in their silence. That night, I sat in my office until the building emptied, staring at the wall of awards I'd earned for this company. 15 years of excellence reduced to a liability because I'd crossed some invisible age threshold. But Zachary had made a crucial mistake. He'd assumed I'd go quietly, grateful to fade into irrelevance. He had no idea who he was dealing with. That weekend, I didn't wallow. I planned. My home office became a war room. 3 monitors displayed spreadsheets, contracts, and correspondence dating back years. I'd always been meticulous about documentation, a habit that was about to pay dividends. First, I compiled every email where Zachary or HR had made veiled references to age. Fresh perspectives, digital natives, emerging talent, all carefully worded but painting a clear pattern when viewed together. Texas employment law was particularly strict about age discrimination for workers over 40. My lawyer friend, Sandra, confirmed what I suspected. I had grounds for a case, but winning would take years and destroy my reputation. I wanted something better than a lawsuit. I wanted victory. The client contracts were my next focus. Ridgway and Calder had always been sloppy about non-compete clauses, relying on relationships rather than legal boundaries. I studied every agreement, noting which clients had contracts with the agency versus personal service agreements that named me specifically. The split was illuminating. Nearly 60% of my clients had insisted on clauses that guaranteed my involvement. Then I dug into the corporate structure. Zachary, in his eagerness to modernize, had overlooked crucial details about intellectual property rights. The campaigns I'd created, the strategies I'd developed, many existed in a legal gray area where ownership wasn't clearly defined. Even better, several key presentations were stored on my personal cloud, created during my own time, using my own resources. But the real gold mine came from an unexpected source: building management records. My friend Thomas worked in commercial real estate, over drinks. I casually mentioned how Ridgway and Calder's lease was up for renewal next year. Actually, he said, scrolling through his phone, it's worse than that. Your building's being sold to Cornerstone Development. They're planning a complete renovation, hiking rents by 40% minimum. Several tenants are already looking to relocate, including us. Not that I've heard, but then again, your new CEO seems more focused on ping-pong tables than property negotiations. That night, I made 3 phone calls. By morning, I had a meeting scheduled with Cornerstone Development. The next phase required delicate timing. I continued showing up to work, playing the part of the aging strategist, gracefully accepting her diminished role. I attended Zachary's insulting workshops, took notes during his Gen Z marketing strategies presentations, and smiled when Brittany explained how my campaigns needed more viral potential. Meanwhile, I was building an arsenal. I reached out to former colleagues who'd left Ridgway and Calder, talented people who'd been pushed out or overlooked. Marcus, a brilliant creative director who Zachary had deemed too traditional. Sarah, an account manager who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times in favor of younger hires. David, a data analyst who'd quit after being told his methods were outdated despite consistently delivering the best insights in the industry. I'm thinking of starting something new, I told each of them. Something that values experience and results over flash and buzzwords. Every single one was interested. I also had quiet lunches with key clients. Not to poach, that would be too obvious. Just to check in, to ensure they were happy with the new direction of their accounts. John Davidson from Meridian was particularly enlightening. Honestly, Maggie? That new girl doesn't get it. She keeps pushing social media strategies for a B2B medical device company. Our buyers are hospital administrators, not TikTok teenagers. I'm sure she'll learn, I said diplomatically. Maybe. But I don't have time to train her. We're launching a new surgical system next quarter. If you weren't involved, I'd already be looking at other agencies. I filed that information away carefully. The most satisfying discovery came from my investigation into Zachary's background. His failed startup was more than just a learning experience. It was a disaster that left investors furious and employees unpaid. Court records showed 3 lawsuits, all settled quietly. His references were carefully curated to hide a pattern of financial mismanagement and ethical corner cutting. Even better, I found traces of a side deal he was orchestrating. Emails accidentally forwarded to a shared drive showed correspondence with Velocity Marketing, a competitor agency. Zachary was planning to outsource significant work to them, work currently handled by senior strategists like me. The kickbacks would go to a consulting firm he'd quietly registered in Delaware. It wasn't just age discrimination, it was corporate sabotage. By November, I had everything I needed: evidence of discrimination, a roster of talented professionals ready to jump ship, concerned clients questioning the agency's direction, inside knowledge of a prime real estate opportunity, and proof of Zachary's conflicts of interest. The chess pieces were in position. Zachary thought he was playing checkers with someone too old to keep up. He was about to learn that experience beats arrogance every time. I scheduled a meeting with HR for the following Monday. Not to complain, but to resign. It was time to make my move, and Zachary wouldn't see it coming until it was far too late. The art of strategic defeat is knowing when to appear weak to gain strength. Over the next 3 weeks, I orchestrated my own professional demise with the precision of a conductor leading a funeral march. First came the mistakes. I missed a deadline for a minor client presentation, something I hadn't done in 15 years. During a creative review, I suggested a dated approach that Brittany quickly shot down in front of everyone. I even asked for help with understanding TikTok analytics in an all-staff email, cementing my image as a digital dinosaur. Zachary ate it up. His condescending smiles grew wider, his patience more theatrical. He started copying HR on emails about my performance concerns, building his paper trail. I let him think he was documenting my decline when actually, he was documenting his discrimination. The orchestrated conflicts were subtle but effective. I publicly disagreed with the new social media coordinator about influencer marketing, making sure to sound inflexible and out of touch. I questioned budget allocations in front of the board, appearing territorial about my accounts. I even had a heated discussion with Brittany about traditional versus digital strategies, letting her win while I seemed flustered and defensive. Maggie's struggling with the transition. I overheard Zachary tell the CFO, "It happens, some people just can't adapt to change." Perfect. He was so busy congratulating himself on pushing me out that he never noticed what I was building in the shadows. 2 weeks before my planned resignation, I incorporated Northlight Strategies. The name was deliberate. Northern lights are a phenomenon of age and experience, particles that have traveled vast distances to create something spectacular. The paperwork was filed in Delaware for privacy, with operations planned for Austin. My team was already assembled in everything but name. Marcus had begun freelancing to test our working dynamic. Sarah was wrapping up her current contract. David had actually improved his outdated analytics methods, creating proprietary algorithms that would give us a significant competitive advantage. But the masterpiece was the real estate play. Cornerstone Development was thrilled to have a potential tenant for the renovated space. When I toured the property, I requested the entire floor directly across from Ridgway and Calder's current offices. "That's quite a statement," the leasing agent said with a knowing smile. "I believe in keeping your competitors close," I replied. The terms were favorable. Cornerstone wanted stable, established tenants to anchor the renovation. My business plan, backed by letters of intent from 3 major clients, secured not just the lease, but an option to purchase the floor after 2 years. The view from what would be my new office looked directly into Zachary's. On a Thursday morning, I made my final preparations. I backed up every file I was legally entitled to, organized transition documents for my remaining accounts, and drafted my resignation letter. It was professional, brief, and gave 2 weeks' notice, standard protocol that would make any retaliation look petty. But first, I needed to give Zachary one last performance. I scheduled a one-on-one with him, ostensibly to discuss my concerns about keeping pace with industry changes. I walked into his office with slightly slumped shoulders, carrying a folder of outdated research about traditional marketing's continued relevance. "Maggie," He greeted me with that insufferable smile. What can I do for you? I sat down heavily, letting out a small sigh. I've been thinking about what you said, about knowing when to step back. His eyes lit up. This was what he'd been waiting for. I want to stay relevant, I continued, injecting just enough desperation into my voice. Maybe you could recommend some courses, or perhaps a reduced role would help me adjust? He leaned back, savoring the moment. I'm glad you're being realistic. Truth is, I've been concerned about you. The missed deadline, the resistance to new ideas. It's not like you. I know, I said quietly. Maybe I have been in the game too long. Not too long, he corrected magnanimously. Just long enough. There's no shame in admitting when you've peaked. Some people have 20-year careers, some have 15. Quality over quantity, right? I nodded, looking appropriately defeated. You're right, I should probably start thinking about transition plans. That's very mature of you. He was practically glowing. Take your time. Think about what makes sense. We can discuss restructuring your role next week. I stood to leave, then turned back as if remembering something. Oh, I've been documenting my client relationships and campaign histories. You know, for whoever takes over. Would that be helpful? Very helpful, he said, already dismissing me mentally. Email them to Brittany when you're ready. Walking out of his office, I allowed myself one small smile. He thought I was documenting my surrender. In reality, I just confirmed that he had no idea how many of those client relationships were personal, not corporate. That night, I sent messages to John Davidson at Meridian and my other key clients. I wanted to give you advance notice about some upcoming changes. Could we schedule a confidential conversation early next week? Every single one responded within hours. The trap was set. Zachary thought he'd won, that I was gracefully accepting obsolescence. He was so blinded by his ageist assumptions that he couldn't see the storm gathering. In 4 days, I would submit my resignation. In 5 days, my clients would receive formal notification of their option to transfer their accounts. In 6 days, Northlight Strategies would announce its launch. And Zachary Miles would learn that experience isn't a liability, it's a weapon. Monday morning, I submitted my resignation with surgical precision. 2 weeks' notice, effective immediately. Professional, courteous, and completely unexpected despite all my theatrical preparation. HR was shocked. Maggie, are you sure? Maybe we should discuss this with Zachary first. I've made my decision, I said calmly. I'll ensure a smooth transition for all my accounts. Within an hour, Zachary was in my office, trying to control the narrative. I heard the news. While I'm disappointed, I understand. You've had a great run here. Yes, I agreed. I have. He shifted, uncomfortable with my composure. We'll need to fast-track the transition. Brittany should shadow you this week. Of course, I've already prepared comprehensive documentation. His relief was palpable. I was going quietly, just as he'd hoped. What happened next unfolded like dominoes, falling in perfect sequence. Tuesday, 9 a.m., John Davidson from Meridian Healthcare called Zachary directly. I've just received notice from my legal team about exercising our contract's key person clause. If Maggie Foster is no longer managing our account, we have the right to terminate without penalty. Tuesday, 2 p.m., Hartwell Industries followed suit, then Pinnacle Financial. 3 of Ridgway and Calder's largest clients, representing $22 million in annual revenue, formally requested immediate meetings about their account status. Wednesday, 8 a.m., I sent a company-wide email, my official farewell message. It was gracious, professional, and mentioned my new venture, Northlight Strategies, launching the following week. I thanked everyone for 15 wonderful years and looked forward to continuing relationships in new capacities. Wednesday, 10 a.m. My phone exploded with calls from clients who hadn't been formally notified yet. Are you starting your own firm? Can we come with you? By Wednesday afternoon, Zachary was in full crisis mode. He called an emergency meeting, demanding I cease all client communications. "This is solicitation," he sputtered. "It's unethical. It's perfectly legal," I interrupted. "I've made no formal offers to any client. They're simply exercising their contractual rights based on change of personnel. Rights that were in place long before you arrived." Sandra, my lawyer, had coached me well. Every word, every action was carefully calibrated to stay within legal boundaries while maximizing impact. Thursday brought the announcement that changed everything. Northlight Strategies went live with a simple website and a powerful message. Experience meets innovation, strategy without compromise. Our launch video featured testimonials from industry leaders, not about Northlight, but about the value of seasoned strategists. It was a subtle but devastating rebuke to ageism in advertising. Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of times on LinkedIn, with comments from senior professionals who'd faced similar discrimination. But the real shock came with our client announcement. 7 major brands had already signed letters of intent to move their business to Northlight. Combined value, $34 million in annual billings. Zachary tried damage control. He offered me a consulting contract, a partnership, even a co-CEO position. "We can work this out, Maggie. You don't need to burn bridges." "I'm not burning bridges," I replied. "I'm building new ones." Friday was my last day at Ridgway and Calder. I packed my office slowly, aware that employees were watching, whispering, choosing sides. Several slipped me their resumes. The smart ones saw which way the wind was blowing. That afternoon, Brittany attempted to salvage the Meridian account. The meeting was a disaster. She pitched TikTok campaigns to executives who wanted sophisticated B2B strategies. She used slang that made the 50-year-old CEO visibly cringe. She promised viral moments for surgical equipment that required FDA approval for every marketing claim. John Davidson called me that evening. "How soon can Northlight take us on?" Monday morning, the real bombshell dropped. An email went to all Ridgway and Calder employees from an anonymous whistleblower, detailing Zachary's side deal with Velocity Marketing, screenshots of emails, incorporation documents for his shell company, evidence of planned kickbacks, everything I discovered and carefully documented. By noon, the board had called an emergency meeting. By close of business, Zachary was under investigation. But I wasn't done yet. Tuesday's announcement made the Austin Business Journal's front page. Northlight Strategies signs lease for premium downtown space. The article included a photo of our new offices, an entire floor in the newly renovated Cornerstone building, directly across from Ridgway and Calder. The layout was perfect. My office faced Zachary's. Every morning, he'd look out his window and see the company built from the clients and talent he'd driven away. A constant reminder of his catastrophic miscalculation. Our grand opening was scheduled for the following month. The invitation list included every major player in Austin advertising, except Ridgway and Calder leadership. Petty? Perhaps. Satisfying? Absolutely. Marcus had designed our logo, a stylized aurora borealis that subtly incorporated the number 45. A celebration of professionals in their prime, not past it. Sarah had already poached 2 more account managers. David's proprietary analytics platform was attracting interest from potential clients we hadn't even pitched yet. The industry was watching, and the message was clear: underestimate experience at your peril. Zachary had wanted fresh blood and young energy. Instead, he'd created a mass exodus that would take years to recover from, if recovery was even possible. His optimal performance window theory had shattered against the reality of client relationships, institutional knowledge, and strategic wisdom that only comes with time. But I wasn't thinking about Zachary anymore. I had a company to build, clients to serve, and a point to prove. The best revenge isn't just success, it's success that forces your doubters to watch every triumphant moment from their slowly crumbling kingdom. The collapse of Ridgway and Calder happened faster than anyone predicted. Within 6 weeks of my departure, they'd lost 40% of their revenue. The board fired Zachary. but the damage was irreversible. Brittany lasted another month before jumping ship to a startup that folded within the year. The chief vibe officer was let go when they could no longer afford Spotify Premium, let alone her salary. By February, the inevitable happened. I was in my new office, a gorgeous corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows, when Paula, my former assistant who'd joined Northlight, knocked on my door. "You're going to want to see this," she said, handing me a tablet. The email from Cornerstone Development was brief. Ridgway and Calder had defaulted on their lease negotiations, unable to meet the new rent terms or secure financing. They'd be vacating by month's end. The property management company wanted to know if Northlight Strategies was interested in expanding. I looked across the hallway at their offices. Half the cubicles were already empty. The remaining employees moved with the sluggish defeat of those updating resumes on company time. "Set up a meeting," I told Paula. "Let's discuss terms." The negotiations were swift. Ridgway and Calder needed someone to take over their lease immediately to avoid further penalties. Their CFO, a decent man who'd never participated in Zachary's discrimination, approached me personally. "Maggie, I know this is awkward, but you're our best option. Would Northlight consider subleasing until we can properly terminate?" "Actually," I said, "I have a better idea." 2 weeks later, I stood in Zachary's former office, watching a moving crew pack the last of Ridgway and Calder's belongings. The agency that had been my professional home for 15 years was reduced to boxes and bubble wrap, victims of their own short-sighted prejudice. The irony was perfect. They'd pushed me out for being too old to keep up, and now I owned their space. Every award on their walls, every client they'd lost, every talented employee who'd defected. All of it led to this moment. The moving crew supervisor approached with a clipboard. "Where do you want the new signage installed?" I pointed to the main entrance. "Right where the old one was. Make sure it's visible from the street." By afternoon, gleaming letters spelled out Northlight Strategies Executive Entrance, exactly where Ridgway and Calder's name had presided for 20 years. Zachary appeared as they were loading the last boxes. He looked smaller somehow. His Patagonia vest replaced by a cheap suit. His swagger diminished to a shuffle. He saw me standing in what used to be his doorway and stopped. For a moment, we just looked at each other. I could have gloated. Could have reminded him of every condescending comment, every dismissive smirk, every time he'd called me obsolete. Instead, I simply nodded and turned back to my new office. But he couldn't let it go. "You planned this all along." I paused, considering my response. "No, Zachary. You planned this. I just refuse to follow your script. This is vindictive. Cruel." "Cruel?" I turned back to face him. Cruel is telling someone their career's over because they're 44. Cruel is destroying careers you deem past their prime. I didn't destroy Ridgway and Calder. You did. I just built something better from the ashes. He stood there, seeming to age a decade in seconds. The boy wonder who'd swaggered in preaching disruption was just another failed executive with a cardboard box of personal items. "For what it's worth," he said quietly. "You were right. Experience matters." "It's worth nothing," I replied. "Not anymore." I watched him walk to his car, shoulders slumped, pulling out his phone, probably calling recruiters, spinning his failure into another valuable learning experience. But Austin's advertising community is small. Word travels. His reputation was as damaged as the company he'd destroyed. That evening, my team gathered in our expanded offices for a celebration. 42 employees now, with more hiring planned. Our client roster had grown to include 3 Fortune 500 companies who'd specifically sought us out after reading about our launch. Revenue projections for our first year would exceed Ridgway and Calder's best year. Marcus raised a champagne glass. To Maggie, who proved that revenge is a dish best served with a side of hostile takeover. Everyone laughed, but I was looking out the window at Austin's skyline, thinking about success and vindication. They'd tried to discard me like outdated software, treating experience as a liability rather than an asset. Now their name was being scraped off the building while mine went up. Sarah approached, holding her phone. Local news wants a statement about the expansion. What should I tell them? I thought for a moment. Tell them Northlight Strategies is proud to preserve the legacy of this historic advertising space. We look forward to serving Austin's business community with the perfect blend of experience and innovation. It was diplomatic, professional, and everyone would understand the subtext. As the celebration continued around me, I sat in my new office, Zachary's old office, and finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of victory. Not just the business success or the financial windfall, but the deeper satisfaction of proving every doubter wrong. They said I was too old to keep up. Instead, I lapped them so thoroughly they couldn't even see my taillights. I sipped my champagne and watched the sun set over Austin, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in the city, Zachary was updating his LinkedIn profile, probably removing Ridgway and Calder entirely. Brittany was learning that youth without wisdom was just inexperience with confidence. The entire Austin advertising establishment was recalibrating their assumptions about age and value. Good. Let them learn what I'd always known. In business, as in life, those who dismiss experience are doomed to be schooled by it. The champagne had gone flat, and the celebration had wound down. My team had left for the evening, heading home to families and lives made more secure by what we'd built together. I remained alone in my office, the corner suite that had once belonged to the man who'd tried to end my career. From this vantage point, I could see the ghost of Ridgway and Calder's logo, a faint outline on the opposite wall where the letters had protected the paint from 15 years of sun exposure. By morning, the painters would cover it completely. The last physical trace of the agency would vanish, leaving only Northlight Strategies to occupy these halls. I walked through the empty offices, my heels echoing on the polished floors. Each space held memories. The conference room where Zachary had first called me outdated. The break room where colleagues had avoided my eyes after that humiliating meeting. The hallway where I'd overheard him laughing about clearing out the deadwood. Now these spaces were mine, not through luck or inheritance or anyone's charity, but through strategic thinking, careful planning, and the refusal to accept someone else's definition of my worth. My phone buzzed. A text from John Davidson. Saw the news coverage. Couldn't happen to a better person. Dinner Thursday to discuss expanding our contract. Another from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Foster, I'm 47 and was just told I'm being phased out for lacking fresh perspectives. Your story gave me hope. Thank you. There would be more messages like that. My inbox had been flooded with them since news of Northlight's launch went viral. Stories from accountants, engineers, salespeople, and executives who'd been deemed too old at 40, 45, 50. An entire generation of professionals discarded for the crime of experience. I couldn't help them all. But I could be proof that the narrative was wrong, that those who'd written us off had miscalculated badly. Standing in what had been Zachary's office, I thought about victory and what it really meant. It wasn't the building or the clients or even the money. Though those were satisfying, it was the look in my team's eyes. People who'd been told they were past their prime, now building something extraordinary. It was knowing that across Austin, in boardrooms and break rooms, people were having different conversations about age and value in the workplace. Would it change everything? No. There would be other Zacharys, other companies that confused youth with innovation. Other workers discarded for having too many candles on their birthday cake. But maybe, just maybe, some of them would think twice. Maybe they'd remember the story of the agency that pushed out their best strategist for being 44, only to watch her take their clients, their talent, and finally their office. Maybe they'd realize that experience isn't a depreciation of value, it's a multiplication of it. I pulled out my laptop and opened our business plan. Phase 1 was complete. Establish Northlight as Austin's premier strategic agency. Phase 2 was already in motion. Expand to Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. Phase 3. Well, Zachary had talked a lot about disrupting the agency model. He just never imagined it would be disrupted by someone he dismissed as a relic. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Clients to serve, campaigns to create, a business to grow. There would be competitors who try to paint us as the old guard, unable to adapt to changing times. Let them try. We'd respond with results, not rhetoric. With proven strategies, not empty buzzwords. With the kind of deep, nuanced understanding that only comes from years in the trenches. They said I was too old to keep up. They were wrong about the first part and catastrophically wrong about the second. I hadn't just kept up, I'd set a pace they couldn't match. I locked the office door and headed for the elevator, pausing at the reception area where tomorrow, our logo would greet visitors. The building was quiet now, but I could already imagine it filled with the energy of people who'd been written off, proving every day that experience isn't a liability to be managed, but an asset to be leveraged. The night security guard, an older gentleman who'd worked the building for 20 years, smiled as I passed. "Congrats on the expansion, Ms. Foster. About time someone showed these kids that age ain't nothing but a number." "Thank you, William," I said. "But they're not kids. They're just people who confused arrogance with insight. Easy mistake to make when you've never faced the consequences." He chuckled. "Well, they're facing them now." Indeed they were. And I was just getting started. I stepped out into the Austin night, breathing in the mixture of barbecue smoke and possibility that defined this city. Somewhere, Zachary was probably crafting his comeback story, spinning his failure into wisdom gained. Somewhere, Brittany was learning that an MBA couldn't replace a decade of client relationships. Somewhere, another 40-something professional was being told they were too old, too slow, too set in their ways. To them, I had just one thing to say: don't believe it, not for a second. Your experience isn't a weakness, it's your weapon. Use it wisely, use it well, and use it to build something they'll wish they'd never driven away. I didn't need to scream or shout or even smile as I walked to my car. Success this complete didn't require commentary. It spoke for itself in every client retained, every hire made, every square foot of office space claimed. They said I was too old to keep up. I'd taken their clients and their office, game, set, and match. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever faced age discrimination in your workplace? How did you handle it? Your experiences matter, and I'd love to hear them in the comments.